And we will get you a name plaque too.
Yeah, so like a makeshift one until we get one order. They just got out of one of them. Yeah.
Hello
Hey,
again.
how are you?
Good. How's everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
We hadn't had one of these in a long
It's
time.
been so long. I know it. So long.
Oh, okay.
You've been promoted. your time. They didn't invite you.
And he didn't invite you.
No, I just showed up. You know what, we could share that later. So we'll kind of, before we actually start the recording process, it's been a while. Many things have changed, we'll just kind of go through it a little slowly, so may kind of just, talk about a few of the items a little slower and kind of go through the explanation part, not only for just, for the board members, but we have the applicants here and also kind of the staff, just to make sure to kind of give ourselves a little quick refresher as we're on the go, for each of the cases. So we'll go ahead and get started. You have everything, it's on.
Yeah,
Once that's it, then we'll just kind of talk one on each. Okay?
okay. All right, so, thank you all for coming. We'll go ahead and get started with the, agenda. First item, on the agenda is gonna be to call the call of order in recognition of quorum. Mr. Price.
Do a roll call. Hendricks, Fulmer, Nelson, Reese, Alderman,
Here.
Lawsonhauser,
Here.
Johnson. All right, we have a quorum.
All right, seeing that we have a quorum, we'll go ahead and move to the next item, public notice. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, a copy of the agenda was sent to the radio and television stations, newspapers, persons requesting notification, and posted on the bulletin board located in the County Administration Office. At this time, I will present the rules of order. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-court. It will take evidence that's presented and it will hopefully render a decision today for each case. The way the mechanics of this will work is that the applicant will be allotted up to 15 minutes to present their case. Anyone that is signed up in opposition will be granted up to 3 minutes each to present their opposition. And then the applicant, if necessary, will be allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal. The board can extend those times at its discretion as needed. The board may have questions for the applicant and also potentially for anyone signed up to speak. The agenda is ordered as the board requires to conduct business. Usually the cases are ordered based on the filing date. Some cases may take longer than other cases, depending on the complexity of the case, the issues at hand, number of witnesses, etc. When you are called to testify, please address your remarks to the board. No exchanges between the speaker and the audience. Please, no audience demonstrations or testimony other than from the podium. You are under oath and are being recorded, so please don't promise to do something that you're not prepared to do. Don't fail to say something that's material to what you intend to do, and please speak into the microphone. In terms of evidence presented, this is not as formal as court. We will accept documents that you've submitted, including any kind of last-minute submissions that you may bring today, and those items you submit will be weighed appropriately. Cases can either be approved, denied, or they could also be granted a conditional decision based on meeting certain conditions. The decisions are final when the minutes are approved, which is typically 1 month from the meeting or the next scheduled meeting. If you take any action before the decision is final, you proceed at your own risk. Any person who may have a substantial interest in the decision rendered by the board today may request a reconsideration of this decision prior to the approval of the minutes. This reconsideration request must be based on a specific error made by the board, and if you have an issue, you may obtain more information about this process from Mr. Price, the zoning administrator. Once the request for reconsideration has been exhausted, any persons with a substantial interest in a decision of the board may appeal to the circuit court, and those appeals must be filed within 30 days after the decision of the board has been mailed, and that does not occur until after the minutes have been approved. If you are unhappy with the board's decision today, please follow the reconsideration and appeal process. Please do not voice your displeasure if you're frustrated with the board. A few housekeeping items. Please silence or turn off your cell phones or pagers. Please make sure that your name is on the sign-in sheet for each case. If you need to come and go, please do so quietly as needed. The board may have occasion to enter into executive session or recess. Anyone that's planning to provide testimony today, please rise to be sworn in. Do we have? Is it Jay Bernstein? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. That concludes the public notice announcement. Moving to the elections, or do we need to approve?
So we do have that on the agenda. However, if you would care to, we can just defer that until the July meeting.
Okay, so I
If
need
if that's the will of the board.
motion for it?
Yes.
The next item is going to be item 3, which is election of officers. We will, although we do have a quorum, we will forego that to the next meeting because all members are not present to elect. So I'll entertain a motion at this point to move the election of officers to.
Motion to move. Second.
It's been, there's been a motion and properly second to move the election of officers to the next scheduled meeting.
All right, those in favor of the motion to defer to the July Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, the election of officers. Lawson-Heiser,
Aye.
Reese. Aye. Alderman,
Aye.
Fulmer,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
That motion passes.
Okay, we're going to move on. With that being said, we're going to move on to the next item, which is going to be additions, deletions to the agenda, and I believe we're referring to this agenda.
Yes.
Additions or deletions to this current agenda.
Okay. So there are 2 items. If you look at item 7, which is the approval of minutes, and that should be actually read October 2nd, 2024 versus 25. And also item 9, which under other business, which is a reconsideration of case ZV 24-007 for Henrietta Duncan, that is being deferred until the July meeting.
I need to do those separately, right? Need to do approval of the minutes first, or do I need to lump them? Can I lump them together?
You can actually, you can just go ahead and approve the agenda with the amendments as referenced.
That being said, we'll move on to the next item, which is going to be additions, deletions to the agenda. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda at this time.
Motion to approve agenda.
All right, we have a motion to approve the adoption of the agenda, and that's with the amendments and edits previously referenced. Those in favor, Lawson-Heiser, Alderman,
Aye.
Reese,
Aye.
Fulmer,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes.
All right, that being said, we will move on to the next item, which will be rules of order. I believe I covered that, right?
Yes,
In
sir.
the public announcement. So that being said, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes for October 2nd, 2024. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I would like to first get my name spelled right on the top section. And with that, I would like to make the motion to approve the minutes.
Oh, you jump on the minutes, okay.
I thought that's what
Yeah, no, say your name corrected on the minutes
On
is
the
what you're
minutes.
referring to, yes, sir.
Okay, got it.
Second that motion.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve the minutes of October 2nd, 2024 with the correction of the name entered, and I will accept a second at this time, yes, thank you.
I think Mr. Reese second.
Mr. Reese, second, okay, gotcha. It has been moved and properly second that the minutes be approved from October 22nd, 20.
All right, those in favor of the approval of the minutes, Johnson,
I think I should abstain as I was not on the board at that time.
and we can go over that, for future reference regarding, attendance and also the approval of minutes also. Because in a nutshell, you don't necessarily have to be in attendance for the case that you're approving the minutes of. What you're doing is you've had the opportunity to read the minutes and review them. And if there's something that you have noticed within there, you can speak on that. But if you don't notice any type of errors within those minutes, you are eligible to take a vote on them. Okay, all right, then, so you would be. Okay, Lawson-Hauser,
Approve.
Alderman. Reese. Fulmer.
Yes.
All right, so that motion passes.
All right, that being said, we move on to the next item on the agenda, which will be public hearing, and we'll defer to Mr. Price this time.
Okay, our first item, it's the only item for consideration before the board today, is case ZV 25-002. The applicant is requesting the Board of Zoning Appeals to grant a variance to reduce the required number of off-street parking spaces for a multifamily residential development. The applicant is James Bernstein, and the property is located at 2015 Blythewood Crossing Lane, tax map R14800-02-27. The parcel is a 30.33 acre tract that's currently undeveloped. The applicant is proposing to construct a 300-unit multifamily residential development. The area is comprised of a lot of residential developments, multifamily, and there's also some commercial in the nearby area. Again, as part of the variance process, the applicant has to prove that the criteria for granting a variance have been met. And again, because it's a reminder that all of the conditions have to be met. It's not a matter of, one or two, but they're so you would have to ensure that all of these have been met. Staff has reviewed the request and kind of go into a little more information on this. The applicant is proposing again to construct a 300 multi-unit, multifamily residential development. According to table 26-5.2 D1 of the Richland County Land Development Code, a minimum number of required off-street parking spaces for a multifamily dwelling is 2 spaces per unit. Based on this requirement, the proposed development will require 600 off-street parking spaces. The applicant is requesting a variance from this standard to allow for a reduction of the number of off-street parking spaces from 600 to 500, which comes out to about 1.67 parking spaces per unit, which is a reduction of 100 parking spaces. According to the applicant, and there was some additional information provided to you, but according to the applicant, the constraints of the site due to existing wetlands and its proximity to I-77 and Wilson Boulevard, also known as Highway 21, restrict the full developmental potential of the property and its ability to provide for residential growth that's critically needed due to expected local job growth in the immediate area. Staff has reviewed the request and looked at the standards that must be met in order for a variance to be approved. Under the extraordinary and exceptional conditions, staff was unable to identify extraordinary and exceptional conditions to the subject property. Again, so the conditions applicable to other properties, there were none, being that we weren't able to find any conditions. Application of the ordinance restricting utilization of the property. Applying the minimum off-street parking standards would not restrict the utilization of the property. It still could be developed. And it's also been determined that if the variance were to be granted, there would be no substantial detriment to the surrounding properties. But however, being that all of the criteria, all the standards could not be met, staff recommends that the request be disapproved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Price. We will now hear from the applicant at this time. So, Mr. Bernstein, if you would, you have 15, I'm sorry, over here. You have 15 minutes at this time. You can please just.
Mr. Bernstein's going to wait for questions, and Mr. Livingston and I are going to take it.
Okay, but in whichever order, you got your. You can, either one.
Okay.
You can do it to that one.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm Leighton Lord with Maynard Nexon. I represent the developer, and I reside at 2416 Terrace Way, Columbia, South Carolina. And with me is Paul Livingston, our engineer from Civil Engineering of Columbia, to answer the really hard, detailed questions. And Jay Bernstein, the developer, is here also. We appreciate the help that staff always gives us on these projects, and we appreciate what staff has done to help us with this. And we respect that staff's job is to read the code very strictly and apply the code exactly the way it's written. However, we're before you now, and we appreciate the opportunity because you guys are a quasi-judicial body that has the ability to vary from the words of the code. And that's what we're asking right now, is for a variance from the code, because we believe we meet all the criteria. We disagree with staff on that. And we believe the variance is a fairly small ask, because this project meets all the requirements that Richland County has for this project. The only requirement we need a variance from is on-site parking. Richland County ordinance requires 2 spots per unit, and we would like 1.67 spots per unit. And the reason is, and Mr. Livingston will go in more detail, this site is very constrained. If you look at the map, I don't know if the map can be shown, I-77 is one place, Wilson Boulevard's another place, and we've got wetlands on this site. And the wetlands really constrain us. I mean, we could ask the Army Corps of Engineers to fill wetlands, but we don't think that's in the best interest of Richland County and this site, to fill wetlands for surface parking. Primarily because we don't think we need 2 spots per unit. Mr. Livingston's gonna talk about some studies that we've had done to show we need far fewer spots, and the developer has other sites, including one in Columbia, South Carolina, that is about 1.67 spots per unit, and we have no parking problems. And as you all know, if the developer has parking problems, they're gonna hear from the residents. If you pull in after work and you can't get a parking place, you're gonna go to the management company and the developer and complain, and they're gonna fix it. So this is an issue that the developer feels strongly about, because they wanna rent every one of these apartments. They don't wanna create a parking apartment complex so people don't wanna rent units, because that's against their business. And they strongly believe from the studies and from their experience with other units that 2 per unit is over parking for a project like this. This project is very important to Richland County because it's true workforce housing. And it's true workforce housing very close to one of the biggest economic development projects in Richland County. This is where people from Scout are going to be renting apartments. So it's a great location. It's close to that site. And as you all know, with real estate, you can't pick your site. You got to find a site that somebody will sell you, that works, that's zoned properly. And the developer has found a great site proximate to where it needs to be for workforce housing for the Scout project. And it works except for the parking. And that's what we're asking you all for the help on. And one of the things that I want to emphasize is we disagree that the site's not constrained. We think it's very constrained. We think that's one of the extraordinary reasons that we're before you today. And most importantly, as the staff report says, if you all grant this variance, it will cause no detriment to any area landowners. So in other words, it won't hurt anyone in this area to grant this variance, but it will allow this project to go forward as planned. So it's very important to us. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Livingston and let him tell you a little bit about the facts about other sites and the constraints, since he's the engineer on the site looking at it.
Thank you all for letting us appear today. We appreciate the opportunity. As mentioned, the site itself, as you can see. Oh, okay. Even if I don't live in Richland County? Okay. My name is Patrick Livingston. I live at 112 Silver Creek Lane, Lexington, South Carolina, 29072. Again, thank you all for letting us be here. As previously mentioned, we do have a constrained site. As you can see on the map, we've got I-77 to the east, and north of it, we've got a extraordinary amount of wetlands kind of to the southeast. It's about half of the site actually is wetlands, and then of course on the west we have Wilson Boulevard and also existing developments that we're kind of working around there. As far as the variance we're asking, there are some projects in the area that our developer has worked on. One being Colonel Bluffs Apartments that is located in Northeast Columbia. It was designed, it has 288 units, 576 total bedrooms, and 478 parking spaces were provided for that development. That is a ratio of 1.6 spaces, which is what we're asking for here. And you can further break that down into 0.83 spaces per bedroom. The project here is 300 total units, 522 total bedrooms, with 500 parking spaces proposed. And as I mentioned, that's the same ratio, 1.6 spaces per unit. If you break it down to bedrooms, it's 0.96 spaces per bedroom. And it should also be noted, we would like you to note that the Colonel Bluffs Apartments have a larger ratio of 3-bedroom apartments, which means more than likely there will be more people driving and living there in those apartments than these that are proposed before you. In addition to this information in your packet, you've got some studies from some other apartment complexes. One is in Charlotte and one is in Maryland. And both of those studies were taken to determine how much parking was utilized at peak hours. And in both cases, they didn't come close to utilizing their parking they had on site during peak hours. In fact, I believe the Charlotte one was 83% of the spaces were used in peak hours. And in the Maryland project, it was even lower than that. So it's, we feel confident that the 1.6 variance would not be a detriment to the project itself. Obviously, having the local project, Colonel Bluffs, they've had no complaints about parking. The city's had no complaints about parking. People are renting there. It's as far as I know, it's a fully rented facility. So again, we would just ask for your consideration and appreciate the time.
Thank you. I just wanted to finish by hitting on a couple of the points. Again, as mentioned, we think it is extraordinary and exceptional because of the constraints of the site and trying to be close to a place that needs workforce housing in Richland County. Secondly, we don't think that this, and the staff agrees, will cause any detriment to any other parties nearby. And, you know, not having this variance will restrict the site, restrict the use of the site, could require filling of wetlands, which we think is completely unnecessary. And so we ask that you all give us consideration for this variance that we think is in the best interest of Richland County, meets the requirements for a variance, and that's it. If you all have any questions for us. Mr. Bernstein's here also, so.
I'm sorry, you finished with your
Oh, yes,
presentation?
finished.
Okay.
Just,
All right,
we're
gotcha.
available for questions. Thank you.
Yep, gotcha. All right, so we've heard from the applicant at this point. So now we will move into a period of session.
Well, I think before you go into that, I think you offer for each one of the members of the board a chance to ask questions that they may have of the applicant or one of the presenters.
Thank you. So at this time, I will open the floor to any board members with questions.
I do have a question. The stats, do you happen to have the stats for Colonel Bluffs in regards to the parking ratios at peak hours?
Yes, Patrick could tell. By the way, one of the points that I wanted to make is that I just heard this from a Richland County employee, there's 6 parking places for every car in Richland County. So,
Problems getting a parking space.
Yeah.
Most of them privately owned, yeah.
So what was the question was, what were the statistics on Colonel Bluffs?
Yes.
Okay, so Colonel Bluffs is a 288 unit complex, 576 total bedrooms, has 478 total parking spaces, which equates to 1.6 spaces per unit, which is what we're asking for here. And as I mentioned before, it has a higher ratio of 3-bedroom units. These are mostly, single, double units?
114 one-bedroom, 150 two-bedroom, 36 three-bedroom.
So being that it has less ratio of 3-bedroom units, the logic there would be that this would require even less parking than that, but we still provided the same ratio as that complex. So that's how we would confidently make that comparison that we have enough parking on this project.
I'm looking for is, in the stats you gave us like what the parking ratios at peak hours. Do we have that for Colonel Bluffs?
We do not have that information for Colonel Bluffs that I'm aware.
We don't have that information for Colonel Bluffs, just that we regularly monitor the parking lot and have heard no complaints from residents or had any issues with parking.
I've got a question. The problem I've got is if we've got the LDC and it clearly states what the limits are, did you consider coming and trying to change the LDC? I don't even know how hard it is to change. Because what we're doing is, if we take that ratio, it seems like it would be good for everywhere. But yet the LDC says it's that ratio is a ratio, so why wouldn't you try to change the code?
I guess that would be more of a county question.
So what you're referring to, of course, is an amendment to the current land development code. And in order to make a text amendment, it would need to be initiated by either 4 parties or bodies within the county. The planning commission, the planning director, the county administrator, or county council. So if it's the will of either one of those, based on the number, the factors, of course, and it's determined that it makes sense, it would have to be introduced in that manner. And as I think as you just stated, and it would be something that would be applicable throughout the county for all multifamily development, not any specific one.
Yeah, and Mr. Fulmer, we thought that a variance was the better course because we think this site is unique because of the physical constraints of major highways and wetlands. And we thought we didn't want to dive into changing the whole code for everybody. but we thought we fit the requirements of a variance, so that's why we took that route.
Got to follow up on.
On the wetlands, these are the Corps of Engineers, this is just what they put out there. I mean, have you
Walked it, is it?
actually wet, or is it just their definition?
It has been delineated and approved. So it's been approved by the Corps, it's been walked by a wetland scientist. So it is a valid determination, and we're confident in that.
Yeah, it would, Mr. Palmer, again, it would have to be approved by the Corps and for filling and mitigation and all that kind of thing. And again, we could do that. It would be very expensive and time consuming and would delay the project, but we just don't think it's necessary because we believe we can do everything we need to do on the existing site if we have this parking variance.
I got a few questions, actually. So my first one, I just want to start out, is the apartment complex, are you planning to have it a gated community? I know the Palisades next to it out here, I'm very familiar with the area. I know the Palisades is a gated community, and I'm just proposing if you plan to have it gated or not.
No, we have no plans for the community to be gated at this time.
What would be your, what would be the plans to prevent additional people from entering the strictly confined spaces in the event that you do not have enough parking spaces? And, you know, because I'm getting somewhere, I'm trying to get somewhere with it, because if it's not gated and you do not have enough spaces per code, then that is going to present additional issues with only really having, because you can't have 0.6 of a parking space, 0.67 of a parking space, right? Either have one or not, right? So it's going to boil down to the 300 residents that you are preparing to build it for, having one parking space, and then the remainder of the parking spaces will be up for grabs if you do not have the area controlled. Just a suggestion, and then well, go ahead, I'll let you respond to that as well.
Right, I would just say, based on the surrounding land uses, we don't anticipate any parking from non-residents in the area. We're bordered by a 7-Eleven that's directly in front of us, which we don't anticipate having overflow parking, and the Palisades is far enough away. We don't anticipate any of their residents parking in our parking lot at this time.
I mentioned the Palisades because they sort of need to have the community gated, which would be a extra protection, or to control the strictly confined parking spaces already. So I said that to say as an enhancement, as possibly a suggestion to, if there was a variance, or if it would meet the exception, that would be considered. Which brings me to the next question. So does the number have to be 300? Because 250 would work under the normal parking spaces, and a lot, 2 parking spaces, because if you have an apartment complex, right, what do you all propose to offer a tenant? What do you, a residents of your apartment, do you propose to offer them 1 parking space and then the rest of the parking spaces are up for grab, or do they have 2 parking spaces that come with each apartment, considering that you don't have a gated community to control that?
Sure, and I would start off by saying, as long as it's allowable by Richland County, we would be open to gating the community if that's something that I think would put everyone's minds at ease. In terms of parking, we don't anticipate having assigned parking spaces at this time outside of any potential garage units that would be on the property. We have worked really hard with the engineer to evenly distribute the parking spaces around the site so that each building has adequate parking in and around it, so that you won't have all of the parking in one cluster next to one building, but it'll be spread out equally through the property.
So let me ask this question. So you have parking spaces, and in apartment complexes, you also have storage or garage spaces as well. So if you assign 1 parking space at 300 parking spaces,
Yes.
that leaves you about, I guess, left over would be
200 additional spaces.
200 additional spaces, and those would need to be utilized for the, you know I'm talking about, the garage spaces that you can get rented that comes with some apartments. They can rent that for storage space. So would those be included in the 500 as well, the 200 be included?
Yes.
Are you understanding what I'm asking you?
Sure.
Because if everyone gets 1 parking space, that's 300 parking spaces. That means we have 200 parking spaces to give in overage, and to provide additional storage for items, cars, storage units, capacities or whatnot. So what would be your plans to address that? I guess I'm asking.
Yeah, I think with this being workforce housing, one thing that, you know, we build tons of workforce housing all throughout South Carolina. And, you know, one of the things that we have realized is that, you know, there are a lot of single parent households that live there. And so we find that at these communities, often there's an over parking, whereas residents would really prefer more green space and not impacting wetlands. And so that's how we derive the number in terms of the garages. Yes, those are part of the 500 parking total that were listed. It's not a significant number of garages, and we've found that most people who want garages typically use them for parking. Now, there's not a requirement that you use it for parking, but we have found that typically those are used for parking.
And could you relate to the concern that maybe, with this being said, that an exception wouldn't be, because it could be 250, right? You all created 300. So what would be the issue with reducing it to 250 to make all in compliance?
Right, and I think that ultimately when we looked at it, the options were do something that's not as good for everybody, which is impact wetlands in the county, and put a big parking lot against the interstate to meet the requirement. So it would be negative for the county. It would be negative for us from an economic standpoint to have fewer units on the same tract of land. And so I think when we looked at it holistically, this seemed to be what made the most sense and to be in the best. We felt like all of the interests of all parties would be more in line.
Is public transportation, is there a bus line out there?
I'm not sure at the moment. I would
It
anticipate.
doesn't, it does.
Yeah.
Westwood is across, high school is across.
Yeah.
Reaches out that far, could be.
Gio might know this, but the plant probably will have something. I know Samsung, Boeing, all those plants typically move people privately around, but I don't know that. I don't know if Gio knows that either. Okay, yeah. But one of the issues with the site was that, and the question about 250, 275, 300 is that we wanted to utilize the site, give it the proper density, and we believe this density in the parking we're asking for is appropriate compared to the studies and other projects that they have. So if you do less 50 units, that's less 50 workforce units in that area of Richland County for people to rent. So somebody else has got to build another project down the street to build more units. So I think the county supports density where you can have it, because that you got your services there, you got your water and sewer, you got everything, and rather than have 200 here and then 100 there and 100 there and spread out and have sprawl, you got it right in this one site. And we think it supports the parking that we need. So again, we advocate the density because we think the site can sustain and serve the density well.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair and Board. Mr. DeLage has identified on our GIS system some common bus stops and bus routes. So it looks like they currently run along Carolina Pines Drive, but also we've from discussions with Comet that they will be extending their route going up into Blythewood.
Are there any more questions from the board before we enter a period of discussion?
make sure you're speaking to the microphone.
You all pretty much asked the questions that I had labeled out. As far as design plans, maybe alternate design.
Like to make the comment, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but also I'm concerned about if you've got the LDC saying one thing and it's good that we not adhere to that, it seems like that should be changed, not a variance. That's just my opinion.
I was just stating for them, it's a singular thing, so it's not pretty much a greater good, not so much, I think. If it impacts positively to the greater good, then fine, but they have to meet within the constraints of their plan, their budget, the capacity of the location, so. It just, I'm looking at it and it just, I think although, would you be willing to read that 300 number? I think if we can get you guys in compliance, because what it looks like and what I'm hearing is that you all have made a plan and that will serve a good purpose, right? But there's no flexibility on there. So there's no standard deviation. There's 300 set. There's not like 300 with 15 going either way or anything like that. And if we can get to that number or get to some type of compromise, I'm not seeing an exception for it, because it's like, we want to build 300 units here. It doesn't meet the parking requirement. It is for greater good, but there's no compromise at all or no flexibility on your end with the proposal, other than what you've done in other cases that may not apply specifically to this case. You know what I'm saying? In this area, which is Blythewood, highly growing community. You have no protections on controlling the amount of people who park in those limited spaces without a gate. You're already at limited spaces because you really only can provide one space per person. And then the rest of the 200 are gonna be scrounged over, you know what I'm saying? Because you only can really give one space per unit. And it just feels like, or I think, just hearing things, that you all are set on 300, that's your number for the space, that's gonna fulfill your financials, if you will, but there's not a compromise because there's not any direction in going towards the 250, so you all can be in compliance with the ordinance in the states. I know you all want an exception, but there's no, you know what I'm saying? There's no, hey, maybe we could go to 275, maybe we could go to 250, and this is what it looks like for us, so we can be in compliance, and you can actually move forward, and you could probably propose something else that will get you the additional 100 spaces, but there's no compromise there, and I just wanted to say that for the record. Doesn't require a response if you want to,
No,
but.
let me check with the developer real quick, if you can just sidebar a second?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
really, I mean, the way they designed it was, this is the density this site will support. And the idea being that, you know, you're gonna need 1,000 units out in Blythewood for this plan.
Yeah, but I'm
Right?
saying, at this point, you either have 250 or nothing at all, is
Right.
what I'm saying.
Right.
According to the law, is what I'm saying. It's according to what's already in place.
Yeah.
And without the exception, you either have 250, so you're in compliance, or you don't have anything at all, and the whole thing is a bust. You get what I'm saying? So I'm trying to reach a compromise
Yeah,
so that we can lawfully act in our roles, and then you can lawfully get something achieved as opposed to having a big nothing burger.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Chair, Board. Just want to make sure, it's kind of caution you, what you have before you is a specific request. You have a request for the reduction of the off-street parking spaces based on what they proposed. I don't think at this point, it's appropriate really to discuss compromise. So what you have before you is, if it's either you approve it or you deny it, and based on what your decision is, it will be up to the applicant to then decide what their next steps will be.
Duly noted, and again, it didn't require a response, just wanted to put it back there after voting, after approval or denial. Maybe something to think about, okay?
Oh,
Geo, is it worth exploring a conditional approval?
So, no, sir. So, kind of just to take this opportunity, typically when you're doing, the board is, the three charges that the board of zoning appeals typically will have. One is an administrative appeal, something totally different. The decisions of whether it be any staff member regarding interpretation of the code, you will hear that case. Determine, actually if the interpretation was correct. You have a special exception in which the use has been determined to be appropriate in that district. However, they want an overview by the Board of Zoning Appeals based on a number of standards that also appear. In that case, there may be some stipulations placed on the special exception. It could be, for example, hours of operation, additional screening, those type things that you can add to the special exception. For variance, however, the criteria is kind of established that those have to be met in order for you to approve it. So I'm not sure where a stipulation could be added or to a variance request.
Mr. Price, could we amend our request and go to ask for a variance to 175 places? So we would find another 25 parking places?
Yeah, again, I think, excuse me, Mr. Lord.
Yes.
Jesus, all these years, Mr. Lord, well.
You got it wrong.
Okay, yeah, I think, so what you have before you again, and respectfully for what, is being requested, whether it be 100, whether it be 50, whether it be 20, that's still what they're asking you is that, what they're stating is that they're unable to meet the requirements of the Richland County Land Development Code, which in this case is 2 units, and they need to establish why they're unable to meet those. And so it's not, again, I'll go back to, it's not really a negotiation necessarily. They have to look at the conditions that are present on the property, something that will place some major constraints on them being able to do a project within reason on this at this time.
Yeah. And in all due respect, we feel like we've established why. And the offer to add 25 more parking places to alleviate concerns about whether or not we have enough. We think we have enough at 167, but we could add 25 more spots and get a variance for 175 and maybe alleviate some of the concerns.
And also I want to point out too that that is a different request than what has been advertised, so any changes to that would.
We have to go back again.
Yes.
Mr. Price, I have a question for you. One of the requirements is that an extraordinary and exceptional condition. What would be an example of that? What would you consider one of those?
Wow. So let's just say that I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't necessarily like to use this one. I try not to use the cases you have before you.
Right.
But let's just say, for example, you had a parcel and wetlands encompass a good portion of the property, which meant that it couldn't meet the required setbacks. Which means you couldn't go further back. So you would ask for a variance to encroach into the front yard setbacks, because what's extraordinary and exceptional about that would be you couldn't go further back on it. And I also want to point out that when you're looking at the extraordinary and exceptional conditions, even if those were identified for a request, that's when the second criteria will come in, or the second standard, that they do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. So I give you an example from a various standpoint. So you can take Lake Murray. You have a number of homes that are built right on the lake. A lot of them don't have the zoning, a lot of them are zoned, what we formerly refer to as the rural zoning designations. Those had different setbacks, but the lots are non-conforming as far as size. So in order for them to meet the setbacks of the rural district, they need a variance because in the rural, and I'm just using the old zoning designations we have, which are no longer current, but in the old rural zoning designation, the front was 40, the rear was 50, the sides were 20. But the lot sizes that they have are more aligned with a single family, which is 25, 20 in the rear, size usually like maybe 7, something like that. So applicant may come in and say, hey, I need a variance because I need to make an addition onto my home and I'm going to encroach into those required setbacks. And the reason why is because my lot is, the configurations of my lot, the size of my lot is non-conforming. That may apply for that one. However, but when looking at the totality of the area, if there are multiple parcels that have that same condition to them, they're all non-conforming based on size, maybe the same configurations and that sort, that in itself would negate the extraordinary and exceptional circumstances. Again, extraordinary and exceptional typically means it is unique to you versus anyone else.
Which is why we think that green stuff up there is unique to us, because it comes right in the middle.
I will also point out respectfully to Mr. Lord, that you're at a point now of discussion, and it's really the board, and so unless there's a question that's actually addressed to us or the applicant, it should just be the board, so.
All right, that being said, heard from the applicant, we asked questions. To move into a period of discussion, or can we go straight to voting with all the discussion is?
At the point is if you feel that more discussion is necessary between the board, you can. If you're ready to proceed with a motion, you can also take that route.
I'll just go ahead and call it. I mean, I think we've discussed, so I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny.
Yes.
The public hearing case ZV 25-002.
Motion to approve? No, motion to vote, I'm sorry. Yeah, motion to vote.
A second.
No, you just need to make a motion whether for approval or denial of the request.
Gotcha.
Motion for approval or denial.
Then you have to just pick one, do you want to approve this? So whoever, someone just needs to make a motion, whether they want to approve, yes, sir, and then you'll vote.
Oh,
So I guess I would need someone to say whether they want to approve or deny it first.
He needs to.
I would need to entertain a motion to either approve or deny that, so I think we need to initiate approval or a deny. Put it in front of.
I'll do it. I'd like to make the motion that we deny this approval.
There's a motion on the floor to deny the approval of case ZV 25-002. Do I have a second?
Excuse me, Mr. Former, I think before you take the second, your reasoning for the denial.
Based,
Based on the LDC that's in place, and it's a greenfield project, and those are the two reasons.
There's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Properly moved in second. We'll now move into a period of voting. Mr.
All right,
Price?
we have a motion for the denial of case ZV 25-002. Those in favor of the motion, Johnson? Lawson Hires? Alderman?
Agree.
Reese?
Disagree.
You vote again. Fulmer?
yes.
All right, so that motion passes 4-1.
With that being said, we we'll move to the next item. Well, no, we don't have to do that because we pushed it off to other business. So now I will entertain a motion to close.
Yes, sir. Adjournment, do we have a motion for adjournment?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion properly second.
All right, well, we'll take a vote. Those in favor? Everybody's ready to go. Those in favor of the motion for adjournment, Johnson,
Aye.
Lustenheiser,
Aye.
Alderman,
Aye.
Reese,
Aye.
Fulmer. All right, that motion